What is happening, Chiefs YouTube? Welcome to another wonderful day here at the, wild world that is Chiefs YouTube. And welcome to another episode of Gridiron Lines. I'm your host, Gary McKenzie, here on the RGR Football Network, the best place for Chiefs YouTube content. Not talking about myself, talking about Ryan and Dan. Both those guys put in so much work. They do a great job. And honestly speaking, I wouldn't be here doing this video if it wasn't for them. They invited me onto this channel. And so I'm grateful to, play my little role and make my videos. And today's video is something I want to rehash on last year. So I talked about this last year. I'm going to talk about it again this year. And that is, I do not believe the NFL is equipped to deal with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. And I do not believe that there is enough high-level competition in the AFC to really do much against the Chiefs once they get to the playoffs. And so I talked about this last year. What do you know? The Chiefs go on to win the Super Bowl. And once again, similar situation as last year. I'm just not seeing a team or a quarterback that has the pedigree to go out and beat Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. Now, we got to let the season play out. But whenever Patrick Mahomes burst onto the scene in the NFL, there were people inside the NFL that were inside the league that were saying it should be illegal for Andy Reid to have Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback. And the reason they said that is because Andy Reid is such a good head coach. In fact, he has a shot to become the winningest head coach of all time, maybe the greatest coach to ever be in the NFL, if he's able to fulfill his contract that he just signed to stay in Kansas City for another handful of years. And he was winning games with the likes of Donovan McNabb, Alex Smith, Michael Vick, Kevin Cobb, all these different quarterbacks that he won football games with, and none of them, not to say anything bad about McNabb or Alex Smith or Michael Vick, but none of them were the complete package that Patrick Mahomes is. And so Andy Reid, was already a phenomenal head coach, had a lot of wins, very winning coach, and now you put Mahomes in the mix, and I just don't know if there's another team in the NFL that can compete with the Chiefs while Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are both still kind of in their prime. There will be times where other teams win, but I just don't see the competition being out there as fierce as it should be. And so, really, I think that the NFL has a problem on its hands. And that is a Patrick Mahomes problem. How are they going to get other teams to compete with the Chiefs whenever Andy Reid and Mahomes are on such a different level than everyone else? And I'm going to talk about the playoff numbers, talk about Super Bowls, and I'm going to explain why I think that Patrick Mahomes is in a league of his own. And it's Patrick Mahomes NFL, and everyone else is just living in it. And the first thing I want to say is that Mahomes single-handedly has more Super Bowls than the rest of the AFC West combined. He has just as many Super Bowls as the entire NFL starting quarterbacks going into 2024. If he wins the Super Bowl next season, he will have more Super Bowls than all other 31 teams' starting quarterbacks combined. So tell me, who out there has this Super Bowl pedigree that can compete with Mahomes? Right now, it's going to have to be an up-and-comer that challenges Mahomes, and we're going to talk about that in this video. So I started with the AFC East, and I'm just going through these quarterbacks and kind of talking about where they sit in terms of stacking up versus Mahomes and Andy Reid. And starting with the AFC East, you got the Bills, Dolphins, and the Patriots. So the Patriots have a rookie quarterback who's most likely going to be starting, Drake May. So no information to go off with Drake May. But we can focus on the Bills and the Dolphins, who have Josh Allen and Tua Tagovailoa, respectively. So Josh Allen has a 63-30 win-loss record, which is pretty dang good. That's a 677 win percentage. And he's 5-5 in the playoffs, which is also pretty good. That's decent. If you're 500 in the playoffs, maybe you can make a push. So it's not bad. So to add to that, though, Josh Allen doesn't have any Super Bowls. In the regular season, he's 3-1 versus Pat Mahomes. So he's gotten Pat Mahomes in the regular season, but when it comes to the playoffs, he's 0-3 versus Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. Has never been able to get over that hump. And if you have an 0-3 record against someone in the playoffs, never really counts. That's saying something. It's also with the Bills, for a long time, it seemed like they were going to be the supreme challenger for the Chiefs. And what do you know? Time has gone by, and the Bills have kind of blown up everything, and they don't have the same nucleus that they used to have. And who knows what's going to happen with the Bills next year? Another thing I want to add is that, and some of you may disagree with this, but I still think there's some validity to this, and that is that no head coach and quarterback pairing have won a Super Bowl together if they haven't won one in their first 5 years. And Josh Allen and Sean McDermott are going into their 6th or 7th year. And so I just am of the opinion that the ship has sailed for the Bills. And they're not going to get it done unless they change head coach. And that's nothing against Sean McDermott. I think he's a good head coach, but I just am of the opinion that I don't think that they're going to get there. Moving on to Tua Tagovailoa for the Dolphins. He's had 4 years in the NFL and has a record of 32-19. That's pretty respectable. 627 win percentage. Has only played in one playoff game versus Patrick Mahomes, and he is 0-1 in the playoffs. And then you have his regular season versus Patrick Mahomes. He's 0-2. So another quarterback that has struggled against Mahomes, has not beat him in the playoffs, does not have a huge playoff level of experience. So Tua, while successful in the regular season, has only played one playoff game and lost it. And did not look good in frigid temperatures versus the Chiefs in last year's wild card game. Moving on to the Jets. So still in the AFC East, we've got Aaron Rodgers. So saved him for last. And he'll be going on his 19th season in the NFL, I believe, or 20th season. He's been around for a long time. Obviously, he didn't start in his first few seasons because he was behind Brett Favre. And that's how old Aaron Rodgers is. If you start mentioning he was a backup for Brett Favre, that's quite some time ago. And so he has a career record of 148-75-1 for a 661 win percentage. That's pretty impressive. He is 11-10 in the playoffs for a 524 win percentage. Also, that's pretty impressive. If you're above 500 in the playoffs, that's a pretty good mark. He has one Super Bowl. So this is one of two quarterbacks in the AFC who have won a Super Bowl. He has never saw Patrick Mahomes in a regular season or playoff game. So how much of a challenger is Aaron Rodgers to Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes? Well, the head coach for the Jets is Robert Saleh, and I think Saleh is an okay head coach. But realistically speaking, Aaron Rodgers is going to be 40 years old, if he isn't already 40 years old, and coming off an Achilles. His last season with the Packers was nothing that was too impressive. So what tells you that after, a mediocre season in Green Bay and then tearing his Achilles and then having 1 year off, another year older, nothing about that is telling me that Aaron Rodgers is going to be a major problem for the Chiefs. Now, I want to say, we talked about in the last video what could stop the Chiefs' three-peat chances, and one of those things were injuries to the Chiefs. Another thing was kind of those any given Sunday moments. And I think that the Jets could potentially be one of those teams, as well as the Bills, that has an any given Sunday moment versus the Chiefs, and they somehow pull something crazy off. So I think that both the Bills and Jets, if they were in the playoffs, given their dynamic at the quarterback position, it would take some type of freak play for them to, or freak game for them to beat the Chiefs. Moving on to the AFC North. So these are the teams that are going to play the Chiefs, or they're going to play the AFC West this year. So every year the NFL shuffles which conference division you'll face off against, and next year it's going to be the AFC North for the Chiefs. I think last year it was the AFC East. So looking at the AFC North quarterbacks, you've got Deshaun Watson, Joe Burrow, Russell Wilson, slash Justin Fields, because I think at some point in time Justin Fields is going to be the starting quarterback for the Steelers before the season ends. And you got Lamar Jackson. So starting with Deshaun Watson, everyone's least favorite NFL quarterback. He has a career record of 36-29 for a 554 win percentage. He is 1-2 in the playoffs with a 333 playoff win percentage. Never won a Super Bowl. He's 1-1 versus Patrick Mahomes in the regular season and 0-1 versus Mahomes in the playoffs. And looking back at that game where the Chiefs came back from 24-0 in the playoffs, after hearing all the news about Deshaun Watson, there's just some like sweet justice about that game for the Chiefs, even more so than, my initial appreciation. And also that game where they came back 24-0, I feel like that was the perfect game to end the Chiefs playoff BS, as you want to call it, because they'd had so many games where they were down, their luck, just random bad things happening. They get down 24-0. You got your hands in the air and you're like, here we go again. And sure enough, here we didn't go again, because the Chiefs ended up coming back and blowing the Texans out in that game. I think the final score was 51-31 or something like that. And so the Chiefs, earned that win. It was an epic win and couldn't have happened against a better guy, in my opinion. So Deshaun Watson, really, after coming into the league and looking pretty good, has looked like crap for the Browns. And who knows if maybe he'll find his former glory. I don't know. But right now, I don't consider Deshaun Watson and Kevin Stefanski as a major competitor to Andy Reid and the Chiefs. We're going to skip Joe Burrow, and we'll come back to him to finish off the AFC North. But moving on to Russell Wilson, 12, 13 years experience in the NFL, 115, 72-1 record. Most of that was with the Seahawks. And looking at what Pete Carroll did with Geno Smith, you kind of got to start to wonder if, maybe Russell Wilson was good because Pete Carroll was good. And so Russell Wilson has a career 612 win percentage. Not bad. He's 9-7 in the playoffs for a 563 win percentage. Once again, if you're above 500 in the playoffs, you're doing okay. And he's won one Super Bowl eons ago with the Seahawks. He's 2-3 versus Mahomes in the regular season. So one of those wins was with Seattle. One of those wins was with Denver. And he's never saw Mahomes in the playoffs. So I don't really think I need to go into the whole Russell Wilson, Mike Tomlin thing. I think that Russell Wilson is past his prime. If any coach could get something more out of him and, turn him back into his winning ways, I would think that Mike Tomlin would be that guy. Mike Tomlin, one of my favorite head coaches in all the NFL. Really awesome head coach. Just consistently wins football games, keeps the Steelers with the winning record. And so I kind of like this pairing of Russell Wilson and Mike Tomlin. But I still don't think there's a chance in hell that they're going to be able to compete with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. I just don't see them competing. Moving on to Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh. Lamar Jackson has an incredible 58-19 win-loss record in the regular season. That's a 753 win percentage. That's pretty dang good. In the playoffs, though, he's 2-4. And that's a 333 win percentage. Never won a Super Bowl. And is 1-3 in the regular season versus Pat Mahomes. And 0-1 in the playoffs. So he's only faced Mahomes once in the playoffs, 0-1, but in total, a 1-4 record versus Mahomes. This is another quarterback who has dominated the NFL, but just cannot get past Patrick Mahomes. And so once again, I also want to add that the whole like John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson have been together for 5 years. And, it's never happened until it's happened, but there's been no head coach quarterback pairing that have gotten over the hump after they've been together for 5 years and haven't won a Super Bowl. So while I don't think the ship has sailed as much as it has for Buffalo, for the Ravens, I still kind of get that vibe. There's still kind of that vibe like they're just not going to do it. And no matter how good the Ravens are every year, for whatever reason, there's something that happens to them in the playoffs where Lamar Jackson becomes human. And we saw it last year, but Chiefs held them to 10 points in the AFC Championship game. So That's I just think that I would put the Ravens in an any given Sunday category versus the Chiefs. Like something freak would kind of have to happen. Chiefs have to have a terrible day. Lastly, we have the Bengals and Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, his winning percentage is not as good as I thought it was. He's 29-22 with a 569 win percentage. But then once he gets in the playoffs, he has turned up the heat a lot, and he's 5-2 in the playoffs with a 714 win percentage. And that's pretty dang good. You know, like I said, if you have a quarterback who has a win percentage above 500 in the playoffs, that's pretty good. You can win some playoff games with that and make some noise. Versus Pat Mahomes, Joe Burrow is 2-0 in the regular season and 1-1 in the playoffs. So we all kind of think of the Bengals as the Chiefs' kryptonite of sorts. But in the playoffs, they're 500 versus Kansas City. Now, regular season, 2-0. That's pretty dang good. But I'm not there whenever you think about the Bengals dominating the Chiefs. I just don't see that. I think that out of all the competition right now that the Chiefs have, I would put the Bengals up there as a team that can go toe-to-toe with the Chiefs. But there's no reason to think that the Chiefs can't beat them. And so a lot of things have to go right for the Bengals to see the Chiefs in the playoffs too. First of all, they have to make the playoffs. Joe Burrow has to stay healthy. They weren't able to do that last year. They have to, win their playoff games to get to face Kansas City. And so the only two losses that Joe Burrow has in the playoffs is one versus Kansas City and then two versus Matt Stafford in the Super Bowl. So as far as challengers go, I still think the Bengals are legitimate challengers for the Chiefs. They're still in that 5-year window. And so this is the one team I would think that wouldn't fall in that any given Sunday category. They would fall in the Chiefs just don't give their best effort type of game, and they can lose. So this is one contender, I think, in the AFC still, even though they didn't have the best showing last year, and they have not dominated the Chiefs really in the playoffs, kind of like everyone wants to say. So moving on to the AFC South, you got the Titans with Will Levis, Colts, Anthony Richardson, Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence, and the Texans, C.J. Stroud. So a lot of young quarterbacks in the AFC South. Will Levis, 3-6 record. Anthony Richardson, 2-2 record. C.J. Stroud, 9-6 record. So not a lot of experience. And both Will Levis and Anthony Richardson never faced off versus Patrick Mahomes, never played a playoff game. C.J. Stroud never faced off versus Mahomes, never played a playoff game versus Mahomes. But he's 1-1 in the playoffs, so he's 500 win percentage. And the Texans lost to the Ravens last year, and the Ravens just looked like an unstoppable team last season. So I think that was a really good rookie campaign for C.J. Stroud. And I'm actually going to put the Texans kind of in that Bengals territory as being a contender for the Chiefs, where if the Chiefs don't play their best game or they don't play a good game, then the Texans might get them in the playoffs. And the reason I say that is because they've been retooling. They've been improving their offensive, firepower, both with receivers. I think they signed Nico Collins to an extension. They've got a lot of good weapons in Houston. And so that's a team that might cause the Chiefs some problems, but we won't know until we see it. And so I'm kind of putting the quarterback head coach pairing DeMeco Ryans and C.J. Stroud on the same, maybe on a level just a little below the Bengals. And the reason I put them a little below the Bengals is because we just haven't seen them face off versus the Chiefs. And, maybe could be some sophomore slump for C.J. Stroud. Just NFL teams start to figure him out a little more. But I think that they're kind of entering that contender territory and could cause the Chiefs some problems. But I'm still not overly concerned about the Texans. And then you got the Jaguars of Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson. Never won a Super Bowl, 0-2 in the playoffs, 0-1 versus Patrick Mahomes. And Trevor Lawrence, for as highly touted of a player he is, he has a 20-30 record in the NFL. That's a 400 win percentage. That gets a lot of head coaches fired and players traded or cut. So kind of Trevor Lawrence is, I would say that he's in an interesting situation where maybe he's kind of getting the Justin Herbert treatment a little bit, where good quarterback, but for whatever reason is not winning football games. And in the playoffs, he's 1-1. So, he had that one playoff win versus the Chargers where they came back after a horrible first half and won the game versus LA Chargers. And the Chargers chargered so hard that game. They've chargered more hard than they'd ever chargered before to lose that game. But their next game, they saw the Chiefs, I think, in the divisional round and lost. So really, from the AFC South, C.J. Stroud might be the only guy I would consider as potentially causing the Chiefs some problems. Moving on to the AFC West, and we're going to start with Antonio Pierce and Gardner Minshew with the Raiders. I mentioned in the last video, I love Gardner Minshew with the Raiders. I think he's kind of a really prototypical stopgap quarterback for the Raiders. Hey, he has a 15-22 record, which is a 405 win percentage, better than Trevor Lawrence, who, Trevor Lawrence replaced Gardner Minshew. And he has an 0-1 record versus Patrick Mahomes in the regular season. He's never played a playoff game. And so, once again, I don't think there's a huge amount of competition to Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid with the Raiders. Moving on to the Broncos, you've got Bo Nix and Sean Payton. Rookie quarterback, no clue what's going to happen. I wouldn't put a rookie quarterback in contention for Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. I don't care who that rookie is. I don't even care if that rookie's Caleb Williams. It's just not going to happen. I'm curious to see what Sean Payton can do with Bo Nix, though, because I think that it's a pretty good fit for those two. They both kind of have Bo Nix sort of has the precision passing timing that Sean Payton really likes. And so I do think Bo Nix was a bit of a reach for them in the first round, but we'll see what Sean Payton can do. Moving on to what I believe to be the most interesting quarterback head coach situation heading into the 2024 season, and that is Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert. So if you remember, Jim Harbaugh made it to the Super Bowl with Colin Kaepernick as his quarterback. And Jim Harbaugh also won a ton of games in San Francisco, won a ton of games at Michigan, and I believe that Staley, the former head coach of the Chargers, was a terrible head coach. And I could say that because of the decisions he made throughout the flow of the game. He would go for it in times whenever you never should go for it, and he wouldn't go for it in times when you should definitely go for it. And the players, at some point in time, there was some mutiny forming in the Chargers locker room last year. And so I think Staley was just not a very good head coach. And he's being replaced by someone who I consider to be an excellent head coach. I think Jim Harbaugh, for all his antics and his tantrums on the sideline, he's an awesome head coach. And so I'm kind of putting the Chiefs on a bit of an alert with the Chargers this season. And, I know the Chargers got rid of a lot of weapons on the offensive side of the ball, but Jim Harbaugh likes to run the football. And I think the Chargers could run the football if they wanted to be committed to it. And so this is going to be an interesting situation where I think the Chargers maybe are one of the more improved, if not the most improved team in the NFL next year. And I could be wrong about this, but my guts tell me that Jim Harbaugh is going to right that ship for the Chargers. But the question is, can Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh compete with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid? And so Justin Herbert, 4 or 5 years of experience in the NFL, has a 30-32 win-loss record, 484 win percentage, 0-1 in the playoffs, lost that crazy game versus the Jaguars. He's 1-5 versus Patrick Mahomes. He's never saw Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. So I had no idea that Justin Herbert was 1-5 versus Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. I thought that he had maybe won 2 games, but 1-5 is pretty bad. And so my question to myself is, can Jim Harbaugh turn things around enough for the Chargers to where I really feel like they're a legitimate threat to the Chiefs? And my opinion on that is next season, no. I don't think that once push comes to shove in the playoffs and all the chips are on the table, that Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert are going to have what they need to do it next year. I do think that they're going to cause the Chiefs some problems in 2024, but they have to continue to retool that roster after, unloading a bunch of players last season or this offseason. And so the jury's still out for the Chargers. I do think they're interesting, but I would kind of put them maybe up towards or a little below where I have the Jets with Aaron Rodgers, or, the Bills, Ravens territory, somewhere below there, as far as being a team that can throw a wrench in the Chiefs' plans. But in totality, the entire AFC, who's going to be the team that stops the Chiefs? And could it be the Bengals? Well, they got to stay healthy, and they've got to play their best game versus the Chiefs in the playoffs, and the Chiefs have to kind of play poorly. I feel like the ship has already sailed for the Bills and the Ravens. The Texans, they have to prove it again next year with C.J. Stroud not having a sophomore slump. The Jets, Aaron Rodgers has to stay healthy, and a lot of other things have to go right for the Jets. And you've got maybe the Chargers. Who knows what's going to happen with them? I don't see them as being like a team that's going to go deep in the playoffs, but I think they're going to be pesky. And really, those are the contenders for the Chiefs. So looking at all of the competition for Kansas City, I'm still going to reiterate, I don't think it's at the level that it needs to be to consistently stop the Chiefs from winning a Super Bowl. And right now, the Chiefs should be the betting favorite to win the Super Bowl in 2024. I don't care how crappy their schedule is to them. This is a team that has Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, perhaps the greatest head coach of all time, and from the eyeball test, the greatest quarterback who's ever played. So you put those two things together, it's going to take something pretty darn special to knock them off their perch. And I am just not seeing that in the NFL right now. Like, I'm not seeing another team that can come to that level. But only time will tell. Now's your chance to let me know in the comments. Do you think I maybe underestimated the Bills or the Ravens, or do you think I'm right in estimating that their ship has sailed? Did I overvalue the Chargers? I know some of you think I'm an idiot for thinking the Chargers are going to do well with Jim Harbaugh. Let me know down in the comments. I love, people who contradict me and tell me that I'm wrong, because then I can learn from that. I like to see the other viewpoints. But this is Gary. This is the conclusion of this video, I suppose. I'm curious to hear what you think, though, because this could go a lot of different ways. And do you also have the same sentiment where you just don't think that there's any contenders in the NFL for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes because they're just that good? But let me know down in the comments. Make sure you like the video if you watched the whole thing. Thank you very much. And subscribe if you haven't done it yet already. But this is Gary, Gridiron Line, signing out. You'll have a good rest of your week.
Thanks for watching this video from the team at RGR Football. Click these videos to see more and subscribe to RGR Football.